So moving on to the next position, Social Justice and Political Engagement Chair, and our candidate is Shariz Dizon. So Shariz, whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm Shariz. In high school, I started to ask my questions like, what was my ancestral history? How is our culture today a product of colonialism and imperialism? Why was it so hard for me to accept my Filipinx identity? And how did my inherent anti-Black and Asian rhetoric contribute to that? It was then I learned that just being Filipino meant that we are inherently political. The deeper we investigate questions like these, we will learn more about ourselves. And I won't know all the answers, but I hope together we ask ourselves more vulnerable questions about the intersectionalities of history, activism, and its effects on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shariz. So you'll have 2 minutes to submit your questions. Alrighty. So our first question comes from our current SJPE chair, Kayla.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for running, and I'm so excited for you. But my question is, sometimes it's difficult to engage the club with certain topics due to energy being down, the meetings being late in the day, or just not so much awareness or prior. So how will you address this difference in energy slash knowledge level and engage the club? Do you want me to put in the chat too? I can totally do that as well. Okay, cool. Got you.
Well, just to address the first thing, I feel like with politics, it is a very intimidating topic to talk about. And I do realize that everyone is at a different knowledge point. So I think just being aware of that is really important and being really patient with everyone. Just because politics and social justice, I know, is not something that you learn overnight. And I have to be able to foster that environment where everyone feels respected to have their own opinion, whether or not they know or whether or not they think they know what they're talking about or not. So fostering that environment is just the main thing I would do for different knowledge levels. As for the energy being brought down, I would definitely say that that is kind of just inevitable. We're all college students, we have 3-4 classes a day, everyone is super tired, but I think just being able to engage in activities that I know are going to be fun for the group. I'm not gonna make lecture-based workshops that are 30 minutes where people are just listening to me talk for 30 minutes, because that would just be a bore. I know I wouldn't be able to sit through that myself, so I'm gonna do my best to make sure that the activities are actually fun and engaging and on hand, so that everyone cheers up about it, just because politics is such a heavy topic to talk about.
Thank you for that answer. So our next question comes from our general membership. Hold on. Let me just, okay. So our question is, the revolutionary and resilient spirit of the Filipino people isn't a common rhetoric that we hear amongst our Phil-Lab communities. In what ways will you bridge this gap for UFC, SU, or even the greater Seattle community?
Sorry, can you repeat it, or you got cut off in the middle of your question?
Yeah, sure. The revolutionary and resilient spirit of the Filipino people isn't a common rhetoric that we hear amongst our Phil-Am communities. In what ways will you bridge this gap for UFC, SU, or even the Seattle community? And it's in the chat too.
Yeah, so it wasn't until high school that I really even found out that the Philippines actually right now is undergoing a civil war for socialism, and it's actually one of the longest civil wars in history. And I think that me just going out and trying to learn about those things really enlightened me and made me want to actually study those things. And that's kind of me just acknowledging that I know it isn't common, and the way I would bridge it is just obviously starting off in maybe fall quarter, just talking about pre-colonialism, colonialism, how that has affected our identity, and just stem off of that, like just start talking about like the war. And I mean, like, it's just, there's just so much to talk about within like the Philippine history and Philippine like war and the revolution and the resilient spirit, that there's going to be so many different ways that that connects to Seattle and the different groups in Seattle and UFC especially. There are also like different organizations like Anak Bayan, which I am currently like about to join, that could help us talk about the revolution and the resilient spirit. And even if you go through like the international district, there are so many different like organizations and groups that are like willing to talk to us about the Filipino people. So that is like a way for us to get involved in like the outer Seattle community. And we can also even talk to other like orgs. Like I know a bunch of people in BSU and ASA, and they hold a bunch of events that talk about not only their culture, but how like other people are marginalized. So it would be really cool if we started being a part of those events.
Liza, you're muted.
Thank you. Okay. In social justice, there can be a range of beliefs that people feel very strongly about. How would you maintain a constructive conversation where views differ? How will you accept different opinions for political topics and mediate the viewpoints of others and mediate viewpoints that differ from your own? I can repeat it too if you want.
It's okay. I think it's really important today to understand that in today's environment, everyone feels so pressured to be on one side of the political spectrum, and that's just not the case for everybody, and I understand that. So like I said earlier, I just really want to be able to foster that kind of environment for people who aren't aware of where they fall on the political spectrum, fostering an environment for the minority group in the room, and fostering an environment for people, those who feel knowledgeable. I think it's really just important to have that patient and vulnerable space where people of whatever group they fall under to be able to talk about like their own opinion, and maintaining that level of respect is really important, just because politics is very subjective and it's easy to like cross the line of overstepping boundaries. Also, another thing is no one should ever have to feel like they have to attack somebody else for like their own viewpoint. So the importance of I statements and really trying to understand others and validate how they feel, and recognize that like your own opinion is not like the only opinion, and other people's opinions matter just as much as your own. And I would make sure to like really emphasize that within each meeting.
Well, thank you, Shariz. That concludes our SJPE portion.